If you're wondering about the background wind noise, it's because it's extremely windy outside, and there are lots of whitecaps out on Birch Bay here. You can see it's even 30 degrees down here by the water. And that's actually pretty cold for the middle of the day in this part of the world. So for the last several weeks, I have been just working nonstop. Basically what happened was I finished truck driving school, applied for a new job, got the new job, but I have to wait until March 6th to start. So I had a little bit of time where I had to go back to work full time. And unfortunately, you don't immediately get paid for going back to work full-time. You have to wait a week or two to actually get paid for the work that you did. So on the weekends, I was having to flex drive to make up the difference in money, just so I didn't run out of money and have to dip into my emergency fund. That's all done with now, and I am just about ready to start my last week of work as an Amazon DSP delivery driver. This weekend I spent most of my time just trying to recover from working 7 days a week and just nailing down exactly what I'm going to do once I start my new job, what I'm going to do with my address, and talking to my dad about the storage unit, seeing if we can figure out what to do with that. And I think I have a solid plan in place now. So I know in the last video I put up, I talked about maybe buying a piece of property or a small house or something like that to deal with my storage unit situation, and I don't think that's going to be the route I go. So my family is putting a lot of pressure on me to buy a place, you know, like a normal person, but there's a lot of good reasons why I don't. And I want to talk a little bit about the arguments that they've been making and that I get all the time when people find out how I live, and it should help explain why I'm doing things in the orders that I'm doing them instead of going the normal route. So most people, you know, they get a job, they either rent or buy a piece of property and just kind of call it a day, and that's it. But the problem that I'm having is with quality of life. So most people think that living in your car or living in other vehicles, or soon I'm going to be living in a truck on the road, that is low quality of life because you're living in a small space and it's a vehicle, so therefore it must be low quality of life. But for me, quality of life means having things like free time and disposable income. And of course, spending time with friends and family is important to me, but to do that, I need both free time and disposable income. And while I might have a little bit of disposable income, I probably could afford to live an ordinary life. For me, just the fact that I have to work so many hours to maintain that, it's just not for me. So far, I've been having to work about 60 hours a week to maintain my current lifestyle, and that includes paying off all my debt and, at the moment, living in my tiny house. But that's only for a short period of time. If I bought a property or a house, anything that would be reasonably priced, at least in my opinion, which is definitely a lot lower priced than what most people would buy, I would have to work similar hours just for the next 30 years. And since I'm not super happy with that lifestyle, I'm not really going to pursue that path. I would much rather just spend the next year or so just hammering away at that debt and getting it paid off as quickly as possible. And I would much rather do that than spend the next 30 years having to work nearly as much for maybe a slightly more comfortable but just more standard kind of lifestyle. Also, I just don't have that big of an issue with living in vehicles. I think it's a lot of fun. And I've gotten a chance to do a lot of the things that I actually want to do, like travel and explore, and it'll be a little bit different living in the truck than what I've been doing now, but it still should be a really fun adventure. And so quality of life is really the biggest thing for me, and just being able to do the things that I want to do, I can actually do that living in a car, and I wouldn't really be able to do that with a piece of property. So the reason why I've decided to just stay a nomad is that property prices, even out in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the country, they're higher than I am willing to pay. And the asking price for houses in most of the country, except maybe a couple of Midwest cities, those are, again, just higher than I think they're worth. And so I can free up a lot of time and a lot of resources by not buying into that. Maybe housing prices, real estate prices will come down relative to my income at some point. Maybe they won't. It's kind of hard to say, but I won't be there for the next year one way or the other because I'll be working and paying off debt, and I'll just have so many more options when the debt's paid off. Maybe I'll continue to be a nomad, maybe I won't, but I think it's the right choice for me, and I'm really excited to go full-on nomad with a more nomadic job. So looking at my address problem, I've kind of realized that I don't really have one right now, obviously because of the tiny house, and so I'll have that up until the end of March for sure, and possibly up until the end of May, depending on what I decide to do next. but I'm pretty sure what I'll do is get that South Dakota residency. I think it probably makes the most sense for my situation, and it's the most legal way that I can have a real address so that I can maintain my CDL and all that stuff. South Dakota seems to have an actual process for travelers and nomads in their books, so that there is a legal process with the government to become an actual nomad with them, and I think that is great. So I'm going to try to take advantage of that. We'll see how that goes. I don't really have to worry about that right now, so I'm not really going to pursue that any further, but that's something I'm going to think about once I am done with the tiny house and I have no need for it anymore. As far as the storage unit goes, I'm probably going to try to downsize in April. My dad's going to come up and take his stuff, and he's going to see what he can do to register the sailboat so it can actually be moved, or rather the sailboat trailer. The sailboat doesn't need to be registered, at least in Washington. So he's going to be taking care of that, and that's actually going to clear up most of the space in the storage unit. I might still have to keep that storage unit around just as a place to put my car. It just depends on what the trucking company has available for parking, and I just don't know that yet. But if I need to come up with my own parking solution, I can definitely just leave my car in the storage unit right now. And so for that reason, I'm probably going to keep the storage unit around for at least the next 2 to 3 months. If I need it beyond then and I find that I have somewhere to put my car, then I can just move the stuff into a smaller storage unit, and that will be just fine. I don't have a lot of stuff in the storage unit, and I was kind of thinking through the value of the stuff that I have in there and the amount of money it's costing me to keep it. And so there's a few kind of sentimental things that I needed to store, and a few just important documents and stuff that I don't want on me at all times. And so those kinds of things can be stored in a smaller storage unit, and I'll have space in a smaller storage unit for just other stuff anyways. So most of the stuff that I have in there is just going to stay the way it is. And so I think that's going to be the plan for my storage unit. And the last thing is, as far as paying off debt goes, I'm still making minimum payments on my debt, which still puts a pretty big dent in it every month, just the way I have the loan structured. But I'm not really doing anything beyond that until I start my new job, and then I'm going to hit it pretty hard. It looks like, in theory at least, I can be completely debt-free within 6 to 8 months, but I'd have to be doing some pretty extreme things to do that, and whether or not I want to do that or not, I don't know yet. I'll get into that probably in a future video, but more realistically, I think it'll probably be about a year before I am completely debt-free. So I think that I'll probably just be driving this truck over the road for about a year, whether it's with this company or another one. That's probably what's going to happen. Also, this new job is supposed to start March 6th, but they actually have to find someone to train me, and it sounds like that's actually a bit of a challenge for them at the moment. I'm not exactly sure why, but it sounds like they don't quite have enough trainers to go around. So I probably will start on March 6th, but it could be a different week that they want to start me on, just depending on whether or not they have a trainer free. And that is completely fine. If I have to wait a little bit longer, I'll just go back to flex driving like I have been on the weekends and make some money that way. You know, I don't get paid as much doing that, but it's enough to support myself, just to keep things going between jobs. And so that's the plan. And I am really excited to not have to work at the DSP anymore, driving delivery vans for Amazon. There are a lot of good things about the job. It's nowhere near as bad as people say, but I'm pretty done with the job and the way Amazon has decided to treat drivers. The customers, too, in a lot of areas that I deliver in, they've started treating drivers pretty badly as well. And I'm pretty done with that. I would rather move on and do something else for a little while. So I'm actually really excited to get started with this new job and to see where it takes me.